settle into the sleepy mind channel. Today we will explore the lost city of Dwarka, a place where an ancient story describes an entire city vanishing beneath the sea, leaving behind a question that has remained unanswered for thousands of years. Along the western edge of India, where the land meets the Arabian Sea, there are areas beneath the water where the seabed is not entirely smooth. In certain places, the sand shifts just enough to reveal shapes that do not follow the natural patterns of the ocean floor. These shapes form lines, edges, and angles that suggest structure rather than randomness. When viewed from above or explored more closely, they begin to resemble the outlines of something that once stood above the surface. Some of these underwater formations appear as arranged stone blocks, positioned in ways that hint at deliberate placement. Others resemble foundations, with edges that define space and boundaries. While time and water have softened their appearance, the overall impression remains that these are not simply scattered rocks, but parts of something that was once organized. If you like videos like these, feel free to like and subscribe. More videos are posted weekly. The idea that these remains could be connected to the ancient city of Dwarka introduces a layer of meaning that goes beyond what can be seen directly. According to traditional accounts, Dwarka was described as a large and carefully planned city, known for its structure, movement, and connection to the sea. It was said to have wide streets, arranged buildings, and spaces that supported both daily life and interaction. These descriptions were not vague or symbolic. They presented the city as a real place, with defined features and a clear sense of organization. The presence of roads, dwellings, and shared areas suggested a level of planning that aligned with early forms of urban development. The city was described as active and connected, shaped by both its inhabitants and its coastal location. What makes the story of Dwarka stand out is not only how the city was described, but how it was said to have ended. Rather than declining slowly or being abandoned, the city was described as disappearing beneath the sea. This idea of submersion became central to its identity, turning Dwarka into one of the most well-known examples of a lost city. For a long time, this description remained within the realm of tradition. Without physical evidence, it was understood as part of a narrative passed down through generations. The details of the city were preserved through repetition and interpretation, rather than through direct observation. This placed Dwarka in a position where it existed clearly in story, but uncertainly in history. That position began to shift as attention turned toward the coastal regions associated with the story. Researchers and explorers began to examine the seabed near the modern shoreline, looking for any indication that structures might exist beneath the water. The conditions in this area are shaped by tides, currents, and sediment movement, which can both reveal and conceal features over time. As surveys were carried out, patterns began to appear beneath the surface. Linear arrangements of stone, defined edges, and clustered formations suggested that the seabed contained more than natural variation. These features did not immediately confirm the existence of a city, but they introduced the possibility that human activity may have once taken place in this area. The presence of these formations created a connection between the traditional accounts and the physical environment. While the link is not fully confirmed, it allows both elements to be considered together. The story provides a description, and the seabed offers features that may relate to it. The relationship between the two becomes a subject of ongoing study. This connection also highlights the importance of the environment in shaping what remains visible. The Arabian Sea is constantly in motion, even when it appears calm on the surface. Currents shift sediment across the seabed, sometimes covering structures and at other times revealing them. As a result, the visibility of these features can change, making careful observation essential. Over long periods of time, coastal regions can change significantly. Rising water levels, erosion, and shifting landforms all contribute to the movement of the boundary between land and sea. These processes can transform areas that were once above water into submerged landscapes. In this context, the idea of a city becoming submerged is not impossible, but part of a broader pattern of environmental change. Understanding these processes is key to interpreting what is seen beneath the water. Not every structure is necessarily the result of human activity, and not every pattern is immediately clear. The challenge lies in distinguishing between natural formations and those that may have been shaped by people. This requires a careful and balanced approach where observation is combined with analysis. Dwarka exists within this balance where certainty is limited and interpretation plays an important role. The traditional accounts describe a city with clarity, while the physical evidence remains partial and open to question. This creates a space where different perspectives can exist, each contributing to the overall understanding of the site. Rather than providing a single answer, the story of Dwarka invites continued exploration. The structures beneath the water, the descriptions preserved through tradition, and the environmental processes that shape the coastline all form part of the same narrative. Each element adds depth, allowing the city to be understood as both a place and an idea. The quiet presence of these underwater formations carries a sense of stillness, yet beneath that stillness lies a history shaped by movement and change. What is visible today represents only a moment within a much longer process, where land, water, and human activity have interacted over time. As this exploration begins, the focus remains on observing carefully and understanding gradually. The city of Dwarka is not presented as a solved mystery, but as a subject of ongoing study. Its story continues to develop, shaped by both what is known and what remains uncertain. Through this, Dwarka holds its place not only as a lost city, but as a connection between narrative and evidence. It reflects how stories can persist across time and how the search for understanding continues long after the original events have passed. The location associated with Dwarka lies along the western coastline of India, where the land gradually meets the waters of the Arabian Sea. This region forms part of a broader coastal landscape shaped by long-term interaction between land, water, and movement beneath the surface. The boundary between land and sea here is not fixed, but constantly shifting, influenced by natural forces that operate over both short and extended periods of time. The Arabian Sea itself is a dynamic environment. Although it can appear calm at the surface, especially under steady light, the water is always in motion. Currents move in different directions depending on seasonal patterns, while tides rise and fall in a regular cycle. These movements affect not only the surface, but also the seabed, where sediment is continuously carried, deposited, and redistributed. This movement of sediment plays a central role in how the underwater landscape is formed and altered. Sand and fine particles are lifted and transported by currents, then settled in new locations as the energy of the water changes. Gradually, this process can gradually reshape the seabed, smoothing some areas while building up others. Structures that lie beneath the water may become buried, partially exposed, or revealed again, depending on these shifting conditions. In coastal regions such as this, the interaction between waves and the shoreline adds another layer of change. Waves break against the coast, carrying energy that erodes some areas while depositing material in others. This process contributes to the gradual movement of the coastline itself. Over long periods, what was once dry land can become submerged, while other areas may extend outward into the sea. The region linked to Dwarka experiences these processes in a way that directly affects how any underwater structures are preserved or altered. The combination of currents, tides, and sediment movement means that the seabed is not a stable surface. Instead, it is an environment where visibility and structure can change over time, requiring careful observation to understand what is present. Water depth in this area varies, but many of the locations associated with underwater exploration are relatively shallow. This allows light to penetrate to the seabed, creating conditions where shapes and patterns can sometimes be seen from above. However, even in shallow water, visibility can be affected by suspended particles, which reduce clarity and make it more difficult to distinguish details. The presence of marine life also contributes to the changing appearance of underwater structures. Gradually, surfaces may become covered with growth such as algae and other organisms. This natural layer can soften edges and alter textures, making it more challenging to determine whether a formation is natural or shaped by human activity. These changes occur gradually, blending structures into the surrounding environment. The coastal environment is also influenced by seasonal variations. Changes in weather patterns can affect wave strength, current direction, and the movement of sediment. During certain periods, stronger conditions may disturb the seabed, exposing features that are usually hidden. At other times, calmer conditions allow sediment to settle, covering structures once again. This cycle of exposure and concealment means that the same area can appear differently at different times. Over longer timescales, broader environmental changes come into effect. Variations in sea level, whether gradual or more pronounced, can alter the relationship between land and water. Coastal regions are particularly sensitive to these changes, as even small shifts in water level can lead to noticeable differences in how the landscape is arranged. Areas that were once part of the shoreline may become submerged, creating underwater extensions of the land. This process provides an important context for understanding how a settlement could come to exist beneath the sea. If a city were originally built near the coast, gradual changes in sea level or land position could eventually place it underwater. This transformation would not occur suddenly, but through a series of small adjustments that accumulate over time. The seabed near Dwarka reflects this history of gradual change. Its contours, patterns, and variations suggest an environment that has been shaped by continuous movement. Within this environment, any structures that exist are subject to the same forces, meaning their current appearance is influenced not only by their original form, but also by the processes that have acted upon them. Understanding these conditions is essential when interpreting underwater findings. Without considering the influence of currents, sediment, and marine growth, it becomes difficult to distinguish between natural formations and those that may have been created intentionally. Each feature must be viewed within the context of the environment in which it exists. The clarity of patterns observed on the seabed can vary depending on how these conditions interact at any given time. In some instances, straight lines or defined shapes may appear more visible, suggesting structure. In other cases, these same features may be partially obscured, blending into the surrounding terrain. This variability requires repeated observation and careful comparison over time. The coastal setting of Dwarka also highlights the connection between human activity and environmental conditions. Settlements built near the sea often take advantage of access to water, trade, and movement. At the same time, they remain exposed to the long-term changes that affect coastal regions. This relationship creates both opportunity and vulnerability. In the case of Dwarka, the environment is not only the setting in which the story takes place, but also a key factor in how that story is understood. The movement of the sea, the shifting of sediment, and the gradual change of the coastline all contribute to the present condition of the site. These elements must be considered alongside any structural evidence. The quiet surface of the water conceals a landscape that is constantly being reshaped. Beneath it, the seabed holds patterns that reflect both natural processes and the possibility of past human activity. The interaction between these elements creates a setting where observation must be both careful and patient. As attention turns to this coastal environment, the focus remains on understanding how it functions and how it influences what can be seen. The location of Dwarka is not defined by a single fixed point, but by a region shaped by movement and change. Within this region, the search for structure continues, guided by both the patterns of the seabed and the processes that shape them. The story of Dwarka is closely tied to a body of traditional accounts that have been preserved over long periods of time. These accounts describe events, places, and figures that form part of a wider historical and cultural framework. Within this framework, Dwarka is presented as a significant city associated with structure, movement, and a connection to the sea. The descriptions provide detail, but they also exist within a narrative style that blends observation with interpretation. These traditional sources are not structured in the same way as modern historical records. They do not follow a fixed system of dates, measurements, or documented events that can be easily verified. Instead, they present sequences of events and descriptions of places that are shaped by storytelling, symbolism, and transmission across generations. This creates a layered form of information where meaning is carried alongside description. Within these accounts, Dwarka is described as a developed and organized city. It is presented as a place of planning, where streets, buildings, and shared spaces were arranged with intention. The city is also linked to a coastal setting, reinforcing the idea that it existed near the sea and was influenced by its presence. These elements create a consistent image of a settlement that aligns with known patterns of early urban organization. The timeline associated with these descriptions is less clearly defined. Without precise dating, it becomes difficult to place Dwarka within a specific historical period using modern methods. Different interpretations of the accounts suggest different time frames, depending on how the information is read and understood. This variation contributes to the complexity of establishing a clear historical context. The transmission of these accounts over time also affects how they are interpreted. As stories are repeated across generations, details may be preserved, emphasized, or adapted. This process does not necessarily remove meaning, but it can influence how information is presented. The result is a narrative that carries both continuity and variation, requiring careful consideration when used as a source of historical understanding. The description of Dwarka as a city that eventually became submerged adds another layer to this context. This element is presented as a defining moment, where the city transitions from a place of activity to one that exists beneath the sea. The inclusion of this detail shapes how the entire narrative is viewed, linking the city to both its physical environment and its eventual transformation. When these accounts are examined alongside modern approaches to history, a difference in method becomes clear. Modern historical study relies on physical evidence, documented records, and measurable data. Traditional accounts, by contrast, rely on continuity of narrative and cultural transmission. Bridging these two approaches requires a careful balance, where each is understood within its own framework. The complexity of this relationship is central to the study of Dwarka. The traditional accounts provide a detailed description of a city, while modern methods seek physical evidence that can confirm or clarify that description. The connection between the two is not always direct, and it often requires interpretation to determine how they relate to one another. Sometimes, elements of the traditional descriptions align with what is known about early settlements. The idea of a coastal city with organized streets and structured spaces is consistent with patterns observed in other locations. This alignment suggests that parts of the narrative may reflect real conditions, even if the exact details remain uncertain. At the same time, other aspects of the accounts may carry symbolic or interpretive meaning. The way events are described, the emphasis placed on certain features, and the structure of the narrative all contribute to a broader context that extends beyond direct observation. Recognizing this distinction is important when considering how the accounts relate to physical evidence. The absence of a fixed timeline also affects how discoveries are interpreted. When underwater structures are identified, their age must be determined through methods such as material analysis and comparison with known sites. These results may or may not align with the timeline suggested by traditional accounts, adding another layer of complexity to the interpretation. This complexity does not reduce the value of the accounts, but it does influence how they are used. Rather than serving as precise historical records, they provide a framework within which the idea of Dwarka has been preserved. This framework offers context and meaning, even as it requires careful analysis when compared with physical findings. The relationship between narrative and evidence is not unique to Dwarka, but it is particularly clear in this case. The detailed descriptions of the city, combined with the uncertainty of its timeline, create a situation where multiple perspectives must be considered together. Each perspective contributes to the overall understanding, even when they do not fully align. The ongoing study of Dwarka reflects this balance. Researchers examine traditional accounts to understand how the city has been described, while also investigating physical evidence to determine what can be observed directly. The interaction between these approaches allows for a more comprehensive view, where both narrative and structure are taken into account. The historical context of Dwarka is therefore not defined by a single source or method. It is shaped by the combination of preserved accounts, interpretive frameworks, and physical investigation. This combination creates a layered understanding, where each element adds depth to the overall picture. The absence of certainty within this context is part of what makes the study of Dwarka distinctive. Rather than presenting a fixed history, it offers a space where information is examined, compared, and interpreted. This process allows the city to be understood as both a described place and a subject of ongoing investigation. Through this approach, Dwarka remains connected to its narrative origins, while also being explored through modern methods. The relationship between these elements continues to shape how the city is understood, creating a context that is both detailed and open to interpretation. As this context becomes clearer, it provides a foundation for examining the physical and environmental aspects of the site. The descriptions preserved through tradition and the methods used to study them together form the basis for further exploration, where the focus remains on understanding how these elements connect. The descriptions of Dwarka, found in traditional accounts, present the city as a place of structure, scale, and careful design. These descriptions go beyond simple references, offering details that suggest an organized environment where movement, activity, and daily life were supported by a clearly defined layout. The city is portrayed as expansive, with arranged streets, constructed buildings, and spaces that allowed for both function and interaction. Within these accounts, Dwarka is often described as a well-planned settlement. Streets are presented as defined pathways that connect different areas of the city, allowing movement to occur in a structured way. Buildings are described as arranged rather than scattered, suggesting that space was used with intention. This sense of organization aligns with the idea of a developed urban environment, where planning plays a central role in how the city operates. The presence of large structures is also emphasized. These may include buildings that served as central points within the city, as well as areas designed for gathering and shared activity. The scale of these structures contributes to the image of Dwarka as a place of significance, rather than a small or temporary settlement. It suggests a level of stability and continuity, where the city was built to support long-term occupation. Descriptions of materials and construction further reinforce this image. The city is often portrayed as being built with durable elements, capable of withstanding both use and time. This emphasis on strength and permanence reflects an understanding of building that goes beyond immediate needs, focusing instead on creating a lasting environment. At the same time, the accounts include elements that extend beyond purely physical description. The city is not only presented as structured, but also as meaningful within a broader cultural and symbolic context. Certain features are described in ways that highlight their importance, suggesting that the city held a place of significance beyond its physical form. This combination of physical detail and symbolic meaning is a key characteristic of these descriptions. The city exists both as a place that can be imagined in concrete terms and as a concept that carries broader associations, This dual nature influences how the descriptions are interpreted, as it requires distinguishing between what may represent observable features and what may reflect symbolic expression. The portrayal of Dwarka as a prosperous and active city adds another layer to this interpretation. The presence of movement, exchange, and daily activity is suggested through references to structured spaces and connected areas. This creates an image of a functioning settlement where people interact, move, and engage with their surroundings in a coordinated way. The connection to the sea is also an important element within these descriptions. Dwarka is consistently associated with a coastal setting, where access to water plays a role in shaping the city's identity. The sea is not presented as distant, but as an integral part of the environment, influencing both the structure of the city and its activities. The idea of the city eventually becoming submerged is closely tied to these descriptions. This transition is often presented as a significant moment, where the city moves from being an active environment to one that exists beneath the water. The inclusion of this event adds a sense of transformation to the narrative, linking the physical description of the city to its eventual state. Interpreting these descriptions requires careful consideration of how narrative elements are used. Some details may reflect actual features of a settlement, while others may serve to emphasize meaning or importance. The distinction is not always clear, and it often depends on how the descriptions are read and understood. The consistency of certain elements across different accounts suggests that there may be a common basis for the description of the city. Features such as organized streets, structured buildings, and a coastal location appear repeatedly, indicating that these aspects are central to the idea of Dwarka. This repetition strengthens their significance within the narrative. At the same time, variation in how these elements are presented reflects the process of transmission over time. As accounts are shared and interpreted, details may be emphasized in different ways, creating a range of perspectives on the same underlying idea. This variation adds complexity to the overall description, requiring careful analysis to identify consistent features. The symbolic dimension of these descriptions also influences how the city is understood. Certain aspects may represent ideas related to organization, stability, or connection, rather than purely physical features. Recognizing this possibility allows for a more nuanced interpretation, where the city is viewed as both a place and a representation of broader concepts. The combination of structure, scale, and symbolic meaning creates a detailed and layered image of Dwarka. The city is presented as organized and substantial, with features that suggest planning and coordination. At the same time, it carries meaning that extends beyond its physical form, connecting it to a wider cultural context. This layered description contributes to the ongoing interest in the city. The clarity of certain features makes it possible to compare them with physical findings, while the symbolic elements invite interpretation and reflection. Together, these aspects create a narrative that is both detailed and open to exploration. The presence of these descriptions also shapes how underwater findings are viewed. When structures are identified beneath the sea, they are often considered in relation to the features described in traditional accounts. This comparison can highlight similarities, but it can also reveal differences that require further examination. Understanding the mythological elements of Dwarka is therefore an important step in interpreting both the narrative and the evidence. It provides context for the descriptions of the city, while also highlighting the need for careful distinction between different types of information. As this understanding develops, it supports a more balanced approach to the study of the site. The descriptions offer insight into how the city has been imagined and remembered, while the physical environment provides a space where these ideas can be explored further. Through this process, Dwarka continues to exist as both a described city and a subject of investigation. Its portrayal as a structured and significant place remains central to its identity, even as the details of that portrayal are examined and interpreted over time. The transition from description to investigation begins with a shift in how Dwarka is viewed. For many years, the city was understood primarily through traditional accounts, where its structure and disappearance were preserved in narrative form. Gradually, this perspective began to change as interest grew in examining whether the descriptions might correspond to physical remains. This shift did not occur suddenly, but developed gradually as methods of study expanded and attention turned toward coastal regions associated with the story. Researchers, historians, and scholars began to consider how the details preserved in traditional accounts might be explored using observation and analysis. The idea of a submerged city moved from narrative into the realm of possibility, where it could be investigated rather than simply described. Early interest in locating Dwarka focused on understanding the descriptions themselves. Textual analysis played a central role as researchers examined how the city was portrayed and what details could be identified as consistent. By comparing different accounts, patterns began to emerge, particularly in relation to the city's coastal setting and its eventual submersion. These patterns provided a starting point for further inquiry. As this interest developed, attention shifted toward identifying potential locations where physical evidence might be found. The western coastline of India, associated with the descriptions of Dwarka, became a focal point for exploration. This region offered both opportunity and complexity, as its dynamic environment could both preserve and obscure evidence. Initial investigations relied on surface-level observation and limited exploration of nearshore areas. Researchers examined the coastline and shallow waters, looking for any indication that structures might exist beneath the surface. These early efforts were cautious, reflecting the uncertainty surrounding the connection between narrative and physical evidence. The development of marine exploration techniques expanded the possibilities for investigation. Tools capable of examining the seabed allowed researchers to look beyond what could be seen from the surface. This marked an important step, as it introduced methods that could detect patterns and formations beneath the water with greater clarity. As these techniques were applied, attention focused on identifying features that might indicate human activity. Researchers looked for linear arrangements, defined edges, and repeated patterns that would differ from natural formations. The goal was not to confirm a specific narrative, but to determine whether the seabed contained structures that could be studied further. The presence of such features began to generate increased interest in the site. Reports of underwater formations suggested that the area might contain remains that warranted closer examination. These findings did not provide immediate answers, but they contributed to a growing sense that the site held significance. At the same time, The interpretation of these early findings required caution. Natural processes can produce patterns that resemble structure, particularly in environments where sediment and water movement shape the landscape. Distinguishing between natural and human-made features became a central challenge, requiring careful analysis and repeated observation. The search for evidence also involved collaboration across different fields of study. Historians, archaeologists, and marine researchers contributed perspectives that helped shape the investigation. This interdisciplinary approach allowed for a more comprehensive understanding of both the narrative and the environment. As interest continued to grow, the focus expanded from simply locating structures to understanding their context. Researchers began to consider how any identified features might relate to the descriptions preserved in traditional accounts. This comparison introduced a new layer of interpretation, where narrative and observation were examined together. The increasing visibility of these efforts also contributed to wider awareness of the site. Reports of underwater exploration and potential findings attracted attention beyond academic circles, bringing the story of Dwarka into broader discussion. This attention, in turn, supported continued investigation and interest in the site. The process of searching for evidence is shaped by both expectation and uncertainty. The descriptions of Dwarka provide a detailed image of a city, while the physical environment offers partial and evolving information. The interaction between these elements creates a space where investigation must remain open to multiple possibilities. The gradual nature of discovery reflects the complexity of the site. Rather than a single defining moment, the understanding of Dwarka has developed through a series of observations and interpretations. Each stage of investigation adds to the overall picture, while also raising new questions. The search for evidence also highlights the importance of method. Careful observation, repeated analysis, and comparison across different sources are essential for building a reliable understanding. Without these approaches, it becomes difficult to distinguish between possibility and confirmation. As exploration continues, the focus remains on gathering information rather than reaching immediate conclusions. The presence of underwater structures, the consistency of certain descriptions, and the conditions of the coastal environment all contribute to the ongoing study of the site. Dwarka, in this context, becomes both a subject of investigation and a point of reference for understanding how narrative and evidence interact. The search for its remains reflects a broader effort to connect traditional accounts with physical reality, while recognizing the challenges involved in doing so. Through this process, the city continues to occupy a space between description and discovery. Its story is not defined solely by what has been found, but by the ongoing effort to understand what may be present and how it relates to the narrative that has been preserved over time. As attention remains focused on the site, the search for evidence continues to develop, guided by both the details of the accounts and the features observed beneath the sea. Each step in this process contributes to a deeper and more careful understanding of Dwarka and its place within both narrative and study. As interest in the possible remains of Dwarka continued to grow, the methods used to explore the seabed became more refined. The shift from general observation to structured investigation required tools and techniques capable of revealing what lay beneath the surface without relying solely on direct visibility. In coastal environments where water clarity can vary and sediment movement can obscure features, these methods play a central role in understanding the underwater landscape. One of the primary approaches used in this process involves the use of sonar. This method allows researchers to examine the seabed by sending sound waves through the water and recording how they return after encountering different surfaces. Variations in the reflected signals can indicate changes in texture, elevation, and structure, providing a way to map the underwater environment even when visibility is limited. Sonar surveys are particularly useful for identifying patterns across larger areas. By scanning sections of the seabed, researchers can detect linear formations, clusters, and shapes that differ from the surrounding terrain. These patterns may suggest the presence of structures, prompting more focused investigation in specific locations. The ability to cover wide areas efficiently makes sonar an essential first step in underwater exploration. The data collected through sonar is translated into visual representations that show the contours and features of the seabed. These representations allow researchers to identify areas of interest where further examination may be required. While sonar does not provide direct visual detail of individual objects, it offers a clear overview of how the seabed is arranged, highlighting potential points of significance. Once areas of interest are identified, more direct methods are used to examine them. Diving allows researchers to approach the seabed closely, observing structures and formations at a detailed level. In shallow coastal waters, divers can move carefully across the site, documenting features and recording their position. This direct observation complements the broader perspective provided by sonar. Diving in such environments requires careful attention to conditions. Visibility can change depending on the amount of sediment suspended in the water, and currents can affect movement and stability. Researchers must work within these constraints, often returning to the same location multiple times to build a consistent understanding of what is present. During these dives, features identified through sonar can be examined in detail. Stone formations, possible alignments, and variations in the seabed are observed directly, allowing researchers to assess their characteristics. The ability to see these features up close provides important context, helping to distinguish between natural formations and those that may have been shaped by human activity. Documentation is an essential part of this process. Measurements are taken, positions are recorded, and observations are noted to ensure that the information gathered can be analyzed accurately. This documentation allows the site to be studied beyond the moment of observation, creating a record that can be revisited and compared over time. In addition to visual observation, underwater photography is often used to capture the appearance of structures. Images provide a way to examine details that may not be immediately apparent during a dive. They also allow for comparison between different areas of the site, helping to identify patterns and relationships between features. The combination of sonar and diving creates a layered approach to exploration. Sonar provides a broad overview, identifying areas that may contain significant features, while diving allows for detailed examination of those areas. Together, these methods support a more complete understanding of the site, linking large-scale patterns with close observation. The use of these techniques also reflects the challenges of working in underwater environments. Unlike land-based archaeology, where structures can often be uncovered and studied directly, underwater sites must be approached in a way that minimizes disturbance. This requires careful planning and a focus on observation rather than alteration. The conditions of the seabed near Dwarka add to this complexity. Sediment movement can change the visibility of structures between observations, meaning that features may appear differently over time. This variability requires repeated study to confirm patterns and ensure that interpretations are based on consistent evidence. As exploration continues, the information gathered through these methods contributes to a growing understanding of the site. Each survey, dive, and observation adds detail to the overall picture, allowing researchers to refine their interpretation of what is present beneath the water. The development of these methods has made it possible to move beyond general speculation and toward more structured investigation. While the presence of structures alone does not confirm their origin, the ability to map and observe them provides a foundation for further analysis. The process remains careful and measured, reflecting the need to balance exploration with preservation. Underwater sites are sensitive to disturbance, and maintaining their condition is essential for ongoing study. This method ensures that the information available today remains accessible for future research. Through the use of sonar and diving, the seabed near Dwarka becomes more than an unseen landscape. It becomes a space that can be examined, recorded, and understood in detail. These methods allow the patterns beneath the water to be observed with greater clarity, supporting the continued effort to interpret what they represent. As these techniques are applied, the focus remains on building a clear and reliable understanding of the site. The structures identified, the patterns observed, and the conditions in which they exist all contribute to the ongoing study of Dwarka. Each step forward is part of a gradual process, where observation and analysis work together to reveal what lies beneath the surface. As underwater exploration around Dwarka progressed, attention increasingly focused on the physical features identified on the seabed. These features, first detected through broader survey methods and then examined more closely through direct observation, began to form a clearer picture of the structures present beneath the water. While interpretation remains cautious, the arrangement and characteristics of these features have become central to the study of the site. Among the most notable findings are stone formations that appear in grouped and repeated patterns. These formations are not scattered randomly, but often occur in ways that suggest alignment. In some areas, stones are positioned in straight or slightly curved lines, creating edges that resemble the outlines of walls or boundaries. The consistency of these arrangements draws attention, as natural formations are less likely to produce such repeated linear patterns across multiple locations. These possible wall-like structures vary in size and shape, but they share certain characteristics. The stones often appear placed in a way that creates defined edges rather than loose or irregular clusters. Sometimes these edges form enclosed or partially enclosed spaces, suggesting the presence of defined areas within the site. These spaces could represent rooms, courtyards, or other organized sections, though their exact purpose remains open to interpretation. The layout of these formations provides further insight into how the site may have been structured. In several areas, lines of stone intersect or run parallel to one another, creating patterns that resemble pathways or divisions between spaces. This arrangement suggests a level of organization that aligns with known settlement layouts, where movement and access are guided by structured pathways. The presence of what appear to be foundations adds another dimension to these observations. Certain formations consist of broader, flatter arrangements of stone that seem to serve as a base. These areas are often more stable in appearance, with stones positioned closely together, creating a surface that differs from the surrounding seabed. Such features are consistent with the idea of constructed foundations designed to support structures above them. The relationship between these possible foundations and the surrounding formations is also significant. In some locations, linear features extend from these broader areas, suggesting connections between different parts of the site. This interconnected arrangement supports the idea that the structures are part of a larger system rather than isolated features. At the same time, the condition of these structures reflects the influence of the underwater environment. Edges that may once have been sharp are now softened by time, while gaps between stones may have been altered by sediment movement. Marine growth further changes the appearance of the surfaces, covering them with layers that blend the structures into their surroundings. These changes must be considered when interpreting what is observed. The depth at which these structures are found also influences how they appear. In shallower areas, light can reach the seabed, making patterns more visible. In deeper or more sediment-covered areas, features may be less distinct, requiring careful observation to identify their shape and arrangement. This variation means that different parts of the site may reveal different levels of detail. The distribution of these formations across the seabed suggests that the site covers a broader area rather than being confined to a single location. Clusters of structures appear in multiple zones, each with its own arrangement of lines and spaces. This distribution supports the idea of a settlement that extended across a defined area rather than a single isolated structure. Despite these observations, interpretation remains measured. While the patterns and arrangements suggest organization, it is important to consider that natural processes can sometimes produce features that resemble structured layouts. The movement of sediment, the action of currents, and the natural formation of rock can all contribute to shapes that appear ordered. To address this, researchers compare the observed structures with known examples of both natural formations and constructed environments. By examining similarities and differences, they aim to determine whether the features are more consistent with one category or the other. This process requires careful analysis and often involves revisiting the same features under different conditions. The consistency of certain patterns across multiple areas strengthens the case for considering these features as potentially constructed. Repeated alignment, defined edges, and interconnected layouts are less likely to occur randomly, particularly when observed in combination. These characteristics continue to guide further investigation and interpretation. At the same time, the absence of complete structures presents a challenge. What is visible on the seabed represents only part of what may have once existed. Upper sections of buildings, if they were present, are no longer visible, leaving only the lower portions that have remained intact. This partial preservation means that interpretation must be based on limited information. Looking at these structures therefore focuses on identifying patterns rather than reconstructing complete forms. By understanding how the visible elements relate to one another, researchers can build a picture of how the site may have been organized, even without full structural detail. The presence of these formations beneath the water contributes to the broader discussion surrounding Dwarka. They provide physical features that can be examined and compared with traditional descriptions, creating a point of connection between narrative and observation. This connection remains open to interpretation, but it forms a central part of the ongoing study. Through careful observation and repeated analysis, the structures beneath the sea continue to reveal their patterns. Walls, foundations, and layouts emerge not as isolated features, but as parts of a larger arrangement that invites further exploration. The clarity of these patterns varies, but their presence remains a key element in understanding the site. As attention remains focused on these formations, the goal is not to reach immediate conclusions, but to build a consistent and reliable understanding of what is present. Each observation adds detail, while each comparison refines interpretation. Through this, the structures beneath the water remain both visible and open to further study, forming an essential part of the story of Dwarka. Alongside the larger structural features identified on the seabed near Dwarka, smaller objects have also been recovered during underwater exploration. These objects, often referred to as artifacts, provide another layer of information that contributes to the overall understanding of the site. While structures suggest organization and layout, artifacts offer insight into the activities that may have taken place within that environment. Among the most frequently noted artifacts are fragments of pottery. These pieces vary in size and condition, with some appearing as small broken sections, while others retain more complete forms. The surfaces of these fragments often show signs of shaping and finishing, indicating that they were produced through deliberate methods rather than natural processes. The presence of pottery suggests everyday use, as such objects are commonly associated with storage, preparation, and other routine activities. The material composition of pottery fragments is also significant. Clay-based objects, when fired, can become durable enough to persist even in challenging environments. This durability allows them to survive long after other materials have deteriorated. However, exposure to water, sediment, and marine conditions can alter their appearance, affecting color, texture, and surface detail. These changes must be considered when examining the artifacts. In addition to pottery, other small objects have been identified that may represent tools or implements. These items can include shaped stones or pieces that appear to have been modified for specific purposes. The identification of such objects requires careful analysis, as natural processes can sometimes produce shapes that resemble tools. Determining whether an object was intentionally shaped involves examining patterns of wear, edges, and consistency in form. Artifacts are often found in relation to the surrounding environment, either resting on the seabed or partially embedded within sediment. Their position can provide clues about how they arrived at their current location. Some may have remained close to where they were originally used, while others may have been moved by currents or shifting sediment over time. This movement adds complexity to the interpretation of their context. The process of recovering artifacts involves careful handling to preserve their condition. Underwater environments can be sensitive, and removing objects without proper documentation can lead to a loss of valuable information. Researchers record the position and orientation of artifacts before recovery, ensuring that their relationship to the surrounding structures is documented. Once recovered, artifacts are examined to determine their characteristics and possible origin. This examination may include analyzing the material, shape, and any markings present on the surface. These details can provide insight into how the objects were made and how they may have been used. Sometimes, comparisons with similar artifacts from other sites can help establish connections or similarities. Dating artifacts is an important part of this process. By applying methods that estimate the age of materials, researchers can place the objects within a general time frame. These estimates are often based on factors such as material composition and comparison with known examples. However, results can vary depending on the method used and the condition of the artifact. The interpretation of artifact findings near Dwarka reflects the broader complexity of the site. While the presence of pottery and possible tools suggests human activity, it does not provide a complete picture on its own. Artifacts must be considered alongside structural features and environmental conditions to form a more comprehensive understanding. The distribution of artifacts across the site also plays a role in interpretation. Clusters of objects in certain areas may suggest zones of activity, while isolated finds may be more difficult to place within a clear context. Patterns in distribution can help identify areas where particular activities may have taken place, though these patterns must be interpreted carefully. The condition of artifacts can vary depending on their exposure to environmental factors. Objects that have been buried beneath sediment may be better preserved, while those exposed to currents and marine growth may show more signs of wear. This variation affects how clearly details can be observed and analyzed. The relationship between artifacts and structures is another important consideration. When objects are found in proximity to possible walls or foundations, they may provide additional context for understanding how those spaces were used. For example, the presence of pottery fragments within a defined area may suggest that the space was used for storage or daily activity. At the same time, the movement of sediment and water means that artifacts may not always remain in their original position. This possibility requires careful evaluation of how objects are distributed and whether their current location reflects their original use. Understanding this movement is essential for accurate interpretation. Looking at artifacts near Dwarka contributes to the ongoing effort to connect physical findings with broader interpretations of the site. Each object adds a small piece of information, which, when combined with other observations, helps build a more detailed understanding of what may have existed beneath the sea. Despite these contributions, the interpretation of artifacts remains cautious. The presence of objects alone does not confirm the existence of a specific settlement, and each finding must be considered within the context of other evidence. This careful approach ensures that conclusions are based on consistent and reliable information. The artifacts recovered from the seabed near Dwarka continue to be examined and compared as research progresses. Their characteristics, distribution, and condition all contribute to the understanding of the site, while also highlighting the challenges of working in underwater environments. Through this process, the smaller objects found beneath the sea take on a larger role within the study of Dwarka. They represent traces of activity that, while incomplete, offer insight into how the area may have been used. These traces remain part of an ongoing investigation, where each finding is considered as part of a broader and evolving picture. As physical structures and artifacts began to be identified near the coastal region associated with Dwarka, attention turned toward establishing a clearer sense of timing. Determining when these materials were created or used is essential for understanding how they might relate to the descriptions preserved in traditional accounts. This process, however, is not straightforward, particularly in underwater environments where conditions can affect both preservation and interpretation. Dating methods rely on analyzing materials and comparing them with known examples. In the case of artifacts such as pottery, the composition of the material, the method of shaping, and the characteristics of the surface can all provide clues about age. These features are examined carefully, often alongside similar objects from other locations that have already been studied and placed within established timelines. One approach involves examining the style and form of pottery fragments. Gradually, methods of production and design tend to change in ways that can be identified and compared. By observing these patterns, researchers can estimate a general period during which the objects may have been made. This form of comparison does not provide an exact date, but it helps place artifacts within a broader time frame. In addition to stylistic comparison, scientific techniques may be applied to determine age more directly. These methods focus on the material itself, analyzing properties that change over time. While such techniques can offer more precise estimates, they also depend on the condition of the sample and the surrounding environment. In underwater settings, exposure to water and sediment can influence the results, requiring careful interpretation. The dating of structures presents additional challenges. Unlike artifacts that can be removed and analyzed individually, structures are often fixed in place and must be studied within their environment. Researchers examine the arrangement of materials, the construction methods, and the relationship between different features to infer when they may have been built. This process relies heavily on comparison with known examples of construction from different periods. Environmental factors play a significant role in how materials are preserved and how they can be dated. Sediment can protect objects by covering them, reducing exposure to movement and marine growth. At the same time, shifting sediment can disturb or relocate materials, complicating efforts to determine their original position and context. These conditions must be considered when interpreting dating results. Another factor that influences dating is the possibility that materials found in one location may not all belong to the same period. Gradually, objects from different stages of activity can become mixed due to natural processes. As a result, a single area may contain materials of varying ages, requiring careful analysis to distinguish between them. The interpretation of dating results near Dwarka reflects this complexity. Some findings suggest that certain materials may date to periods that align broadly with early settlement activity in the region. Other results indicate variations that do not fit neatly within a single timeline. These differences contribute to an ongoing discussion about how the site should be understood. The relationship between dating evidence and traditional accounts adds another layer to this discussion. The descriptions of Dwarka provide a narrative that suggests a specific sequence of events, including the existence of a structured city and its eventual submersion. Dating evidence, however, must be evaluated independently, based on observable characteristics and measurable data. Sometimes, elements of the dating evidence appear to correspond with aspects of the traditional descriptions, particularly in relation to coastal settlement activity. This correspondence can support the idea that parts of the narrative may reflect real conditions. At the same time, differences in timeline or interpretation highlight the need for caution when drawing direct connections. The process of establishing a timeline is therefore not about confirming a single version of events, but about building a consistent understanding based on available evidence. Each artifact, structure, and environmental factor contributes information that must be considered alongside other findings. This layered approach allows for a more balanced interpretation. Advances in analytical techniques continue to refine this process. Improved methods for examining materials and more detailed comparisons with other sites provide additional context for interpreting results. As new data becomes available, earlier conclusions may be adjusted, reflecting the evolving nature of research. The underwater environment near Dwarka remains a key factor in how dating is approached. The movement of water, the presence of sediment, and the effects of marine growth all influence the condition of materials. These factors must be accounted for to ensure that dating results are as accurate as possible. Despite these challenges, the study of dating evidence remains central to understanding the site. Establishing a time frame helps determine how the observed structures and artifacts might relate to one another, as well as to broader patterns of settlement in the region. This understanding supports further investigation and comparison. The interpretation of timeline evidence continues to develop as research progresses. Each new finding adds detail, while also highlighting areas where further study is needed. This ongoing process reflects the careful balance required when working with complex and variable data. Through this approach, the dating of materials near Dwarka contributes to a clearer, though still evolving, picture of the site. It provides a framework within which observations can be organized, even as uncertainties remain. The focus remains on building a reliable understanding based on evidence, rather than reaching immediate conclusions. Through this, the study of time becomes part of the broader effort to understand Dwarka. It connects physical findings with patterns of activity, while also interacting with the narratives that have preserved the idea of the city across generations. Each piece of evidence adds to this connection, shaping how the site is viewed within both study and story. Understanding how a settlement might come to exist beneath the sea requires careful attention to the processes that shape coastal regions over long periods of time. The area associated with Dwarka is part of a dynamic environment where land and water interact continuously. This interaction is influenced by gradual changes that, while often subtle in the short term, can produce significant transformations when viewed across extended timescales. One of the key processes involved is the movement of sea level. Over long periods, sea levels can rise or fall due to a combination of environmental factors. These changes alter the position of the shoreline, shifting the boundary between land and water. In coastal areas, even a small change in sea level can have a noticeable effect, particularly where the land is relatively flat. As sea levels rise, areas that were once above water may become submerged. This process does not occur as a single event, but as a gradual transition. the shoreline moves inward, and features that were once part of the coastal landscape begin to lie beneath the surface. Structures built near the original shoreline can be affected by this shift, eventually becoming part of the underwater environment. In addition to changes in sea level, erosion plays a significant role in shaping coastal regions. Waves carry energy toward the shoreline, breaking against the land and gradually wearing away material. This process can remove sections of the coast, altering its shape and reducing its elevation. Gradually, erosion can contribute to the movement of structures from land into the sea. Sediment movement is closely connected to both sea level change and erosion. Sand and other particles are transported by currents and waves, accumulating in some areas while being removed from others. This constant redistribution of material reshapes the seabed and the shoreline, influencing how structures are preserved or exposed. The combination of these processes creates a setting where gradual transformation is the norm. A settlement built in a stable coastal location may remain unchanged for long periods, but over time, the cumulative effect of environmental change can alter its position relative to the sea. This transformation can lead to partial or complete submersion, depending on the extent of the changes involved. In the context of Dwarka, these processes provide a possible explanation for how a coastal settlement could come to exist beneath the water. If the city was originally located near the shoreline, gradual changes in sea level and land position could have shifted that shoreline over time. What was once dry land may have become shallow water and eventually part of the seabed. The nature of this transformation would likely have been progressive rather than sudden. As conditions changed, areas closest to the water would have been affected first. Structures in these areas might have experienced increasing exposure to waves and currents, leading to gradual deterioration. Further changes would extend this process inland, affecting additional parts of the settlement. At the same time, sediment could both protect and obscure structures. Sometimes, layers of sand may have covered parts of the site, preserving them by reducing direct exposure to water movement. In other cases, shifting sediment could uncover features that had previously been hidden. This interaction between exposure and protection contributes to the current appearance of underwater sites. The stability of structures during this process depends on how they were built and how they interacted with their environment. Foundations made of durable materials may remain intact even as surrounding conditions change. Other elements, particularly those made from less durable materials, may not survive, leaving only the more stable components visible. The result of these processes is an underwater landscape that reflects both the original form of the settlement and the changes that have occurred over time. The patterns observed on the seabed may represent the lower portions of structures that once extended above the surface. Their current position provides evidence of the gradual transformation that has taken place. It is important to consider that these processes are ongoing. The coastline associated with Dwarka continues to be shaped by currents, waves, and sediment movement. As a result, the site is not fixed, but subject to further change. Features that are visible today may be altered or concealed in the future as conditions continue to evolve. Looking at coastal change therefore involves both understanding the past and observing the present. By examining how similar processes operate today, it becomes possible to infer how they may have acted over longer periods. This comparison helps provide context for interpreting the current state of the site. While the idea of a city being submerged may seem dramatic, the processes involved are often gradual and continuous. The accumulation of small changes over long periods can produce outcomes that appear significant when viewed as a whole. This perspective helps place the transformation of coastal settlements within a broader environmental framework. In the case of Dwarka, the interaction between land and sea remains central to understanding its story. The possibility that environmental change contributed to the submersion of structures connects the narrative of the city with observable processes. This connection supports a more grounded interpretation, where the focus remains on how natural forces shape human environments. Through careful observation of these processes, the transition from land to seabed becomes easier to understand. The patterns visible beneath the water are not isolated features, but part of a continuous process of change. Each element reflects a stage within that process, linking the present condition of the site to its past form. As this understanding develops, it provides a framework for interpreting the structures associated with Dwarka. The role of sea level change, erosion, and sediment movement helps explain how a coastal settlement could become submerged. This explanation does not depend on a single event, but on the gradual accumulation of environmental change over time. Through this, the study of coastal transformation becomes an essential part of understanding Dwarka. It connects physical evidence with natural processes, allowing the site to be viewed within a broader context. The movement of the sea, the shifting of land, and the passage of time all contribute to the present condition of the underwater landscape. The underwater environment near the region associated with Dwarka is shaped by a set of conditions that influence how structures appear, how they are preserved, and how they can be studied. These conditions are not constant, but change over time due to the movement of water, the shifting of sediment, and variations in visibility. Understanding these factors is essential for interpreting what is observed on the seabed. Water movement plays a central role in shaping the underwater landscape. Currents flow through the area, carrying fine particles across the seabed and influencing how material is distributed. These currents vary in strength and direction, often changing with seasonal patterns. Even when the surface appears calm, the movement below continues, affecting how sediment settles and how structures are exposed. The action of these currents contributes to the gradual reshaping of the seabed. In some areas, material is removed, revealing underlying features. In other areas, sediment accumulates, covering structures that may have previously been visible. This ongoing process means that the same location can appear different at different times, depending on the balance between removal and deposition. Sediment itself is a key factor in how underwater features are preserved. Layers of sand and fine particles can act as a protective covering, reducing exposure to water movement and limiting the effects of marine growth. When structures are buried beneath sediment, they may remain relatively stable, protected from direct interaction with currents. At the same time, sediment can also obscure features, making them difficult to detect. A structure that is clearly visible at one moment may become partially or completely hidden as sediment shifts. This variability requires repeated observation to confirm patterns and ensure that interpretations are based on consistent evidence. Visibility in the underwater environment is influenced by the presence of suspended particles. When currents disturb the seabed, fine material can be lifted into the water, reducing clarity. In these conditions, it becomes more difficult to distinguish shapes and details, even in relatively shallow areas. Clearer conditions occur when the water is more stable, allowing particles to settle and improving visibility. The variation in visibility affects how exploration is conducted. Researchers must work within the conditions available, often returning to the same location multiple times to observe it under different circumstances. This method helps build a more reliable understanding, as features can be compared across varying levels of clarity. Marine growth also contributes to the appearance of underwater structures. Surfaces that have been exposed for long periods may become covered with organisms that attach to stone and other materials. This growth can soften edges, alter textures, and change the color of surfaces, making it more challenging to identify original features. The interaction between marine growth and sediment creates a layered effect. Sometimes, structures are partially covered by both, with sediment filling gaps and growth forming a surface layer. This combination can make it difficult to determine the original shape of a structure without careful observation and analysis. Water depth influences how these conditions are experienced. In shallower areas, light reaches the seabed more easily, making patterns more visible when clarity allows. In slightly deeper areas, reduced light and increased sediment disturbance can make observation more challenging. This variation means that different parts of the site may require different approaches to study. Temperature and seasonal changes also affect underwater conditions. Variations in temperature can influence water movement and the behavior of marine organisms, while seasonal changes can alter the strength of currents and the amount of sediment in motion. These factors contribute to the overall variability of the environment. The combination of these conditions creates a setting where stability and change exist together. Structures may remain in place for long periods, while their appearance is altered by the environment around them. As a result, what is observed is not only a reflection of the original structure, but also of the processes that have acted upon it over time. Understanding these environmental influences is essential when interpreting patterns on the seabed. Without considering the effects of currents, sediment, and visibility, it becomes difficult to determine whether a feature represents a stable structure or a temporary formation shaped by natural processes. The need for repeated observation is a direct result of this variability. By examining the same area under different conditions, researchers can identify features that remain consistent over time. These consistent patterns are more likely to represent stable structures, while features that change significantly may be influenced more by environmental factors. The underwater environment near Dwarka therefore requires a careful and patient approach. Observation must be combined with an understanding of how conditions affect what is seen. Each feature is considered not only in its current state, but also in relation to the processes that may have shaped it. The presence of these conditions also highlights the challenges of underwater study. Unlike land-based environments, where structures can often be examined directly, underwater sites are influenced by factors that can obscure or alter evidence. This requires methods that account for variability and focus on building consistent observations over time. As research continues, the role of environmental conditions remains central. The movement of water, the shifting of sediment, and the variation in visibility all contribute to the ongoing process of observation and interpretation. These factors shape how the site is understood and how its features are identified. Through this understanding, the underwater landscape becomes clearer, not because it is static, but because the processes that shape it are recognized. The patterns observed on the seabed are seen within the context of these processes, allowing for a more balanced interpretation of what they represent. Through this, the study of environmental conditions supports the broader investigation of Dwarka. It provides the context needed to interpret structures and artifacts, ensuring that observations are grounded in an understanding of the environment in which they exist. The result is a more careful and reliable approach to studying the site beneath the sea. As the features beneath the seabed near Dwarka continue to be observed and recorded, one of the central questions remains whether these formations are the result of human construction or natural processes. This distinction is not always clear, particularly in underwater environments where movement, erosion, and sediment can shape materials in ways that resemble structured forms. Careful analysis is required to evaluate each feature within its broader context. Natural formations can produce patterns that appear organized at first glance. The movement of water and sediment can align stones in certain directions, while erosion can create edges that seem defined. Sometimes, repeated environmental processes can generate shapes that resemble walls, boundaries, or foundations. These similarities make it necessary to examine features closely before drawing conclusions. To address this, researchers look for characteristics that are more consistent with deliberate construction. One of the most important indicators is alignment. When stones or formations appear in straight or consistently curved lines across multiple locations, this may suggest intentional placement. Natural processes can create alignment, but repeated and consistent patterns across a site are less likely to occur without some form of organization. The presence of defined edges is another key factor. Structures that have clear boundaries, particularly those that form enclosed or partially enclosed spaces, may indicate constructed features. Natural formations tend to produce irregular shapes, while constructed environments often include more consistent edges that define space and function. Spacing and repetition also play a role in this analysis. When features appear at regular intervals or follow a repeated pattern, this can suggest planning. For example, a series of stones positioned at similar distances from one another may indicate an underlying design. Such repetition is more commonly associated with constructed environments than with natural processes. The relationship between different features is equally important. In a constructed setting, individual elements are often connected, forming part of a larger system. Pathways may link areas, and boundaries may define sections within the site. When multiple features appear to relate to one another in a consistent way, this supports the possibility of organized structure. At the same time, each of these indicators must be considered carefully. Natural processes can sometimes produce features that resemble these characteristics, particularly in environments where water movement is strong and consistent. The challenge lies in determining whether the observed patterns are the result of repeated natural action or intentional design. To assist in this process, comparisons are made with known examples of both natural formations and constructed sites. By examining similarities and differences, researchers can identify features that align more closely with one category than the other. This comparative approach provides a framework for interpreting observations in a consistent way. The condition of the features also influences interpretation. Structures that have been exposed to water movement for long periods may have lost some of their original definition. Edges may become rounded, and gaps between materials may be altered by sediment. These changes can make it more difficult to identify original characteristics, requiring careful observation to recognize underlying patterns. Marine growth adds another layer of complexity. Surfaces covered with organisms may obscure details, making it harder to distinguish between natural and constructed features. In such cases, patterns must be identified through the overall arrangement rather than individual surface details. The depth and location of features can also provide context. Structures found in areas that align with former coastlines may be more likely to represent human activity, particularly if they correspond with known patterns of settlement. However, this context must be supported by additional evidence to strengthen interpretation. The analysis of these features is therefore a process of weighing multiple factors. No single characteristic is sufficient to confirm whether a structure is human-made or natural. Instead, a combination of alignment, spacing, repetition, and relationship between features must be considered together. This method allows for a more balanced interpretation, where conclusions are based on consistent patterns rather than isolated observations. It also supports the ongoing nature of the study, where new observations can refine or adjust previous interpretations. In the case of Dwarka, the features observed on the seabed present a mixture of characteristics. Some alignments and patterns suggest organization, while other aspects remain less clear. This combination reflects the complexity of the site, where both natural processes and potential human activity may be present. The careful evaluation of these features is essential for building a reliable understanding of the site. By examining each element within its broader context, researchers can identify patterns that are more likely to represent stable structures rather than temporary formations. The process also highlights the importance of patience in underwater study. Features must be observed under different conditions, compared across multiple locations, and analyzed using consistent methods. This gradual approach allows for a more accurate interpretation over time. As this analysis continues, the distinction between natural and constructed features becomes clearer, not through a single observation, but through the accumulation of consistent evidence. Each pattern identified contributes to this understanding, while also maintaining a cautious approach to interpretation. The goal of structural analysis is not to confirm a specific outcome, but to understand what is present based on observable characteristics. This focus ensures that conclusions are grounded in evidence, even when that evidence remains partial or open to further interpretation. Through this process, the seabed near Dwarka becomes a site of careful examination, where patterns are observed, compared, and understood within the context of the environment. The distinction between natural and human-made features remains central to this effort, guiding the interpretation of what lies beneath the water. As physical features and artifacts near the region associated with Dwarka continue to be studied, they are often considered alongside the descriptions preserved in traditional accounts. This comparison forms a central part of the investigation, where narrative and observation are examined together. The goal is not to force a direct match, but to understand where alignment may exist and where differences remain. The descriptions of Dwarka in traditional sources present a city with organized streets, structured buildings, and a clear connection to the sea. These elements provide a framework that can be used to evaluate physical findings. When patterns observed on the seabed appear to reflect aspects of this framework, they are noted as possible points of alignment. One area of comparison involves the general layout of the site. The presence of linear formations and intersecting patterns beneath the water can be viewed in relation to the idea of streets and pathways described in traditional accounts. While these formations do not provide a complete representation of a city, their arrangement can suggest a level of organization that is consistent with such descriptions. The coastal setting is another point of alignment. Both the narrative and the physical location place Dwarka near the sea, where interaction between land and water plays a central role. The identification of structures in a coastal or nearshore environment supports this aspect of the description, linking the narrative to observable conditions. At the same time, the comparison reveals areas where alignment is less clear. Traditional accounts often describe the city in detail, including features that suggest a level of completeness and scale that is not fully visible in the physical findings. The structures observed on the seabed represent only partial remains, making it difficult to confirm the full extent of the city as described. The condition of the physical evidence also contributes to this difference. Gradually, environmental processes have altered the appearance of structures, removing or obscuring elements that may once have been present. As a result, the current state of the site may not reflect its original form, complicating direct comparison with detailed descriptions. The interpretation of traditional accounts introduces another layer of complexity. These accounts may include symbolic or narrative elements that are not intended to represent physical features in a literal way. Distinguishing between descriptive detail and symbolic expression is an important part of the comparison, as it affects how alignment is evaluated. Differences in timeline also play a role. The dating of artifacts and structures provides a range of possible time frames, while traditional accounts may not specify precise dates. This lack of alignment in chronology makes it more difficult to connect specific findings directly to the events described in the narrative. Despite these differences, the comparison remains valuable. It allows researchers to identify patterns that may support certain interpretations, while also highlighting areas where further investigation is needed. This balanced approach ensures that both alignment and mismatch are considered as part of the overall analysis. The process of comparison also encourages careful reading of traditional accounts. By examining how the city is described, researchers can identify consistent elements that may correspond to physical features. These elements, such as organization, coastal location, and structured space, provide a basis for evaluating findings. At the same time, the comparison requires a clear understanding of the limitations of both sources. Physical evidence is often incomplete and influenced by environmental conditions, while traditional accounts may reflect narrative emphasis as well as observation. Recognizing these limitations helps prevent conclusions that rely too heavily on one source alone. The interaction between narrative and evidence creates a dynamic process of interpretation. As new findings emerge, they are compared with existing descriptions, and interpretations are adjusted accordingly. This ongoing process allows for a more refined understanding over time. In the case of Dwarka, this comparison does not lead to a single definitive conclusion. Instead, it highlights a range of possibilities where certain features align with traditional descriptions while others remain uncertain. This range reflects the complexity of the site and the need for continued study. The presence of both alignment and mismatch is not unusual in such investigations. Many historical studies involve comparing different types of information, each with its own characteristics and limitations. The value lies in understanding how these sources relate to one another, rather than expecting them to match exactly. Through this process, Dwarka continues to be understood as both a described city and a site of physical investigation. The comparison between the two provides insight into how narratives are preserved and how they may connect to observable features. The careful evaluation of alignment and mismatch supports a balanced perspective, where neither source is given absolute priority. Instead, each contributes to a broader understanding that takes into account both description and evidence. As this comparison develops, it provides a foundation for further exploration. Patterns identified through this process guide additional investigation, helping to focus attention on areas that may yield more information. Through this, the comparison between ancient texts and physical findings remains an essential part of the study of Dwarka. It connects narrative with observation, allowing each to inform the other while maintaining a careful and measured approach to interpretation. As the study of Dwarka has developed, the interpretation of its underwater features has remained a subject of ongoing discussion. The presence of structures, artifacts, and patterns on the seabed has led to a range of perspectives, each offering a different explanation for what these features represent. This diversity of interpretation reflects both the complexity of the site and the challenges of working with incomplete and evolving evidence. One perspective suggests that the features identified beneath the water may represent the remains of an ancient settlement. Support for this view is based on the alignment of certain patterns, the presence of possible foundations, and the recovery of artifacts that indicate human activity. When considered together, these elements form a picture that is consistent with the idea of an organized environment. Within this interpretation, the coastal location of the site plays an important role. Settlements have historically developed near water due to access to resources and movement. The identification of structures in a nearshore environment aligns with this pattern, supporting the possibility that the area may have once been occupied. Another perspective approaches the findings with greater caution. This view emphasizes the influence of natural processes in shaping the seabed, noting that currents, sediment movement, and erosion can produce patterns that resemble structured forms. From this standpoint, the features observed may be the result of environmental conditions rather than deliberate construction. This interpretation highlights the need to examine each feature carefully, considering whether its characteristics can be explained by natural processes. The presence of alignment or repetition alone is not considered sufficient to confirm human activity, particularly in a dynamic coastal environment where similar patterns can occur without intentional design. A third perspective combines elements of both approaches, suggesting that the site may contain a mixture of natural formations and human-made features. According to this view, some structures may reflect deliberate construction, while others are the result of environmental processes that have shaped the area over time. This interpretation acknowledges the complexity of the site and the possibility that multiple factors are involved. The differences between these perspectives are shaped in part by the type of evidence being considered. Structural patterns, artifact findings, and environmental conditions each provide information, but they do not always lead to the same conclusions. The interpretation of this information depends on how it is evaluated and how different pieces of evidence are weighted. The limitations of underwater study also contribute to the ongoing debate. Visibility, access, and preservation conditions can affect what is observed and how clearly it can be interpreted. Incomplete data means that conclusions must often be based on partial information, leaving room for different interpretations. The role of traditional accounts adds another dimension to the discussion. For some, the descriptions of Dwarka provide a context that supports the interpretation of physical findings as part of a historical settlement. For others, these accounts are viewed as separate from the physical evidence, requiring independent evaluation. The relationship between narrative and observation remains a point of consideration within the debate. Advances in technology and methodology continue to influence this discussion. Improved mapping techniques, more detailed analysis of materials, and repeated observation of the site provide additional data that can refine interpretations. As new information becomes available, existing perspectives may be adjusted or reconsidered. The ongoing nature of the debate reflects the careful approach required in such studies. Rather than seeking immediate confirmation, researchers aim to build a consistent understanding based on evidence that can be observed and verified. This method allows for multiple perspectives to exist while maintaining a focus on careful analysis. The presence of differing interpretations is not a sign of uncertainty alone, but also of active investigation. Each perspective contributes to the overall understanding by highlighting different aspects of the evidence. Through comparison and discussion, these perspectives help refine the interpretation of the site. The debate also underscores the importance of maintaining a balanced view. Focusing too strongly on one interpretation without considering alternatives can limit understanding. By examining multiple possibilities, researchers can identify patterns that are more likely to be consistent across different explanations. In the case of Dwarka, the range of interpretations reflects the intersection of narrative, physical evidence, and environmental context. Each element influences how the site is understood, creating a complex picture that requires careful consideration. The ongoing discussion encourages continued exploration and analysis. As methods improve and additional data is gathered, it becomes possible to revisit earlier interpretations and assess them in light of new information. This process supports a gradual and evolving understanding of the site. The absence of a single definitive conclusion allows the study of Dwarka to remain open and active. Rather than closing the question, the debate keeps attention focused on the evidence and the methods used to interpret it. This openness is an essential part of the investigative process. Through this ongoing discussion, Dwarka continues to be examined from multiple perspectives, each contributing to a more detailed understanding. The combination of differing interpretations ensures that the site is approached with both curiosity and caution, allowing for a balanced and careful exploration of what lies beneath the sea. As the study of the seabed near Dwarka has progressed, the methods used to observe and analyze underwater features have continued to evolve. Advances in technology have made it possible to examine the site with greater clarity, providing more detailed information about structures, patterns, and materials. These developments have expanded the scope of research, allowing for a more precise and systematic approach to investigation. One of the most important advancements has been the improvement of seabed mapping techniques. Modern sonar systems are capable of producing highly detailed representations of the underwater landscape. These systems send sound waves across the seabed and measure how they return, creating images that show variations in elevation and texture. Compared to earlier methods, the level of detail is significantly higher, making it easier to identify patterns that may indicate structure. These mapping techniques allow researchers to examine larger areas with greater accuracy. Instead of focusing on small sections, it is now possible to create broader maps that show how different features relate to one another. This wider perspective is essential for understanding the layout of the site, as it provides context for individual observations. In addition to sonar, underwater imaging technology has also improved. High-resolution cameras and video systems can capture detailed images of structures and artifacts, even in conditions where visibility is limited. These images allow researchers to study features more closely, often revealing details that are not immediately visible during a dive. Lighting systems play a key role in this process. By providing controlled illumination, they help reduce the effects of low light and suspended particles. This makes it easier to distinguish shapes, edges, and textures, supporting more accurate observation of the site. The use of remotely operated vehicles has further expanded the possibilities for exploration. These devices can be guided from the surface, allowing researchers to examine areas that may be difficult to reach through direct diving. They are equipped with cameras and sensors that transmit information in real time, providing immediate feedback and enabling precise investigation. Remotely operated vehicles are particularly useful in areas where conditions are unstable or where extended observation is required. They can remain in place for longer periods, collecting data that would be difficult to gather through manual exploration. This capability adds depth to the study of the site, allowing for more detailed analysis over time. Data processing has also become an important part of modern research. The information collected through mapping and imaging systems is analyzed using advanced software, which can highlight patterns and relationships within the data. This analysis helps identify features that may not be immediately obvious, supporting a more comprehensive understanding of the site. Three-dimensional modeling is one of the outcomes of this process. By combining data from multiple sources, researchers can create detailed representations of the seabed and its features. These models allow for closer examination of structures from different angles, providing insight into their shape and arrangement without disturbing the site. The ability to revisit these models over time also supports comparison. As new data is collected, it can be added to existing models, allowing researchers to track changes and refine their interpretation. This ongoing process contributes to a more accurate and stable understanding of the site. Advances in material analysis have also improved the study of artifacts. Techniques that examine the composition of materials can provide information about how objects were made and how they have changed over time. This analysis supports the process of dating and helps place findings within a broader context. The integration of these technologies has created a more structured approach to underwater research. Mapping, imaging, and analysis work together to provide multiple layers of information, each contributing to the overall interpretation of the site. This integrated approach reduces reliance on single observations and supports a more balanced understanding. At the same time, the use of advanced technology does not remove the need for careful interpretation. Data must still be evaluated within the context of environmental conditions and compared with known examples. Technology provides clearer information, but it does not determine conclusions on its own. The application of these methods near Dwarka has contributed to a growing body of information about the site. Patterns identified through mapping, details captured through imaging, and insights gained through analysis all add to the understanding of what lies beneath the water. Each method supports the others, creating a more complete picture. The use of modern technology also allows for more consistent documentation. Information can be recorded in a way that can be shared, compared, and revisited, supporting collaboration across different areas of study. This consistency is essential for building a reliable body of research. As these methods continue to develop, they provide new opportunities for investigation. Improvements in resolution, data processing, and exploration techniques allow for increasingly detailed observation of underwater environments. These advances contribute to a gradual refinement of understanding, where each step builds on previous work. Looking at Dwarka benefits directly from these developments. The ability to examine the seabed with greater precision supports a more careful evaluation of structures and artifacts. This, in turn, contributes to the broader discussion about how the site should be interpreted. Despite these advancements, the process remains measured and ongoing. Technology enhances observation, but it does not replace the need for careful analysis and comparison. Each finding must still be considered within the broader context of the site and its environment. Through the use of modern research methods, the seabed near Dwarka becomes more accessible to study. Features that were once difficult to observe can now be examined in greater detail, allowing for a deeper understanding of the site. This continued development reflects the evolving nature of research, where new tools support the ongoing effort to interpret what lies beneath the sea. As the understanding of the seabed near Dwarka continues to develop, attention has increasingly turned toward the preservation of the site and the protection of its features. Underwater environments present unique challenges in this regard, as the same conditions that allow structures to remain undisturbed can also lead to gradual change. Maintaining the balance between observation and preservation is therefore an essential part of ongoing research. One of the primary considerations in preserving underwater sites is the impact of natural processes. Currents, sediment movement, and marine growth continue to shape the seabed, affecting how structures are exposed or concealed. While these processes are part of the natural environment, they can alter the condition of features over time, making it important to document them carefully as they are observed. Sediment can play both a protective and a disruptive role. When structures are covered by layers of sand, they may be shielded from direct exposure to water movement, helping to preserve their form. At the same time, shifting sediment can uncover features, exposing them to currents and increasing the likelihood of gradual erosion. This interaction creates a dynamic situation where preservation conditions are constantly changing. Marine growth adds another layer to this process. Organisms that attach to surfaces can form protective coverings, but they can also obscure details and contribute to the gradual breakdown of materials. The presence of such growth must be considered when assessing the condition of structures and planning methods for their study. Human activity is another important factor in the preservation of the site. Increased interest in underwater locations can lead to more frequent visits, which, if not carefully managed, may disturb sediment or alter the position of artifacts. Even small changes can affect the context in which features are observed, making controlled access and careful handling essential. To address these challenges, preservation efforts focus on minimizing disturbance while maximizing documentation. Rather than removing structures or artifacts unnecessarily, researchers aim to study them in place, recording their position and condition as accurately as possible. This method helps maintain the integrity of the site while still allowing for analysis. The use of modern technology supports this approach by enabling detailed observation without direct contact. High-resolution imaging and mapping allow researchers to examine features closely while leaving them undisturbed. This reduces the risk of damage and ensures that the site remains available for future study. Monitoring is also an important part of preservation. By revisiting the site over time, researchers can observe how conditions change and how structures are affected. This ongoing observation provides valuable information about the stability of the site and helps identify areas where preservation efforts may need to be adjusted. Sometimes, protective measures may be considered to reduce the impact of environmental or human factors. These measures are designed to maintain the current condition of the site, preventing unnecessary disturbance while allowing natural processes to continue. The goal is not to stop change entirely, but to ensure that it does not result in the loss of important features. The decision to implement such measures requires careful evaluation. Each action must be considered in terms of its effect on the site, balancing the need for protection with the importance of maintaining natural conditions. This balance is central to the preservation of underwater environments. Legal and organizational frameworks also play a role in protecting sites like Dwarka. Regulations can limit activities that may disturb the seabed, helping to ensure that research is conducted responsibly. These frameworks provide a structure within which preservation efforts can be coordinated and maintained. Collaboration between different groups supports this process. Researchers, institutions, and organizations work together to share information and establish best practices for studying and protecting the site. This cooperation helps ensure that preservation efforts are consistent and informed by a range of perspectives. Public awareness contributes to preservation as well. By increasing understanding of the significance of underwater sites, it becomes easier to support measures that protect them. Awareness encourages responsible behavior and reinforces the importance of maintaining these environments for future study. The preservation of Dwarka is therefore an ongoing process that involves both observation and management. It requires attention to environmental conditions, careful handling of features, and the use of methods that minimize disturbance. Each of these elements contributes to maintaining the site in a condition that allows for continued study. The challenges involved in this process reflect the complexity of underwater environments. Unlike sites on land, where structures can often be stabilized more directly, underwater features are subject to forces that cannot be controlled entirely. This requires an approach that works with these conditions rather than against them. Through careful preservation, the features identified near Dwarka can continue to be studied over time. Maintaining their condition allows for repeated observation, comparison, and analysis, all of which contribute to a more reliable understanding of the site. The focus remains on ensuring that the information available today is not lost through unnecessary disturbance or neglect. By preserving the site in its current state, it becomes possible to continue building knowledge gradually, using methods that respect both the environment and the evidence it contains. Through this, preservation supports the broader investigation of Dwarka. It ensures that the structures and artifacts beneath the water remain accessible for future research, allowing the process of observation and interpretation to continue. The protection of the site is therefore not separate from its study, but an essential part of it. Looking at Dwarka does not remain limited to the past. The processes that may have contributed to the submersion of coastal structures are not confined to a distant period, but continue to shape shorelines in the present. This connection between past and present gives the site a broader relevance, linking the patterns observed beneath the water to changes that are still taking place today. Coastal regions around the world are influenced by gradual changes in sea level. These changes occur over long periods, driven by shifts in environmental conditions that affect the volume and distribution of water. While the rate of change can vary, the overall effect is similar, as the boundary between land and sea moves over time. In areas where land lies close to sea level, even small changes can alter the position of the shoreline. Sections of coast may experience increased exposure to waves, leading to gradual erosion. As material is removed, the land can recede, and areas that were once stable may begin to change. This process reflects the same type of interaction between land and water that is considered when examining sites like Dwarka. The movement of sediment continues to play a key role in shaping these environments. Currents carry sand and other particles along the coast, redistributing material in ways that can both build up and reduce landforms. This ongoing movement creates a shifting landscape where the appearance of the shoreline can change over time. Modern observations of these processes provide a clearer understanding of how gradual transformation occurs. By measuring changes in sea level, tracking sediment movement, and observing coastal erosion, it becomes possible to see how small adjustments accumulate into larger changes. These observations offer insight into how similar processes may have acted in the past, The relevance of these patterns becomes more apparent when considering settlements located near the coast. Many communities continue to exist in areas where land and water meet, relying on access to the sea while also being exposed to its influence. This balance creates conditions that require awareness and adaptation. In some regions, efforts are made to manage the effects of coastal change. Structures may be built to reduce erosion, and strategies may be developed to adapt to shifting conditions. These efforts reflect an understanding that coastal environments are dynamic and that long-term planning is necessary to maintain stability. Looking at Dwarka provides a reference point for understanding these challenges. The possibility that a settlement may have been affected by gradual environmental change highlights the importance of considering how such processes operate over extended periods. It suggests that the interaction between human activity and the environment is ongoing, rather than limited to a specific moment in time. The connection between past and present also emphasizes the importance of observation. By examining how coastal regions change today, it becomes possible to develop a clearer understanding of how similar changes may have occurred in earlier periods. This comparison supports a more informed interpretation of underwater sites. The patterns observed in modern environments show that transformation is often gradual and continuous. Shorelines do not shift all at once, but move over time through the accumulation of small changes. This perspective aligns with the processes considered in the study of Dwarka, where submersion is understood as part of a longer sequence of events. The relevance of these processes extends beyond individual sites. Coastal change affects a wide range of environments, influencing how land is used and how communities adapt. Understanding these patterns contributes to a broader awareness of how natural systems interact with human activity. Looking at Dwarka therefore becomes part of a larger conversation about environmental change. It connects the observation of underwater structures with the ongoing movement of coastlines, highlighting the continuity between past and present. This connection reinforces the importance of studying both historical and modern conditions together. At the same time, the present offers tools that allow for more precise observation of these changes. Measurements of sea level, mapping of coastlines, and analysis of sediment movement provide detailed information about how environments evolve. These tools support the study of both current and past conditions, linking them through shared processes. The awareness of these patterns also encourages a more careful approach to coastal environments. Recognizing that change is ongoing allows for better planning and management, helping to reduce the impact of long-term transformation. This awareness is supported by both modern observation and the study of sites like Dwarka. The relationship between Dwarka and modern coastal change is therefore one of continuity. The same types of processes that may have influenced the site continue to operate, shaping environments in similar ways. This continuity provides a framework for understanding how the past and present are connected. Through this perspective, Dwarka is not only a subject of historical interest, but also a point of reference for understanding current conditions. Its study contributes to a broader understanding of how coastal regions evolve and how human activity interacts with these changes. As attention remains focused on these patterns, the importance of careful observation and analysis continues to grow. The processes that shape coastlines are ongoing, and their effects can be seen in both ancient and modern contexts. By examining these processes, it becomes possible to understand how environments change and how those changes influence the presence and preservation of human activity. Through this, the study of Dwarka extends beyond its immediate setting, connecting the observation of underwater structures with the wider patterns of environmental change. The movement of the sea, the shifting of land, and the passage of time all contribute to this connection, linking past experience with present understanding. Beneath the surface of the Arabian Sea, the structures associated with Dwarka remain in a state of quiet stillness. Their forms are defined not by movement, but by the gradual processes that have shaped them over time. What is visible today represents a balance between preservation and change, where elements of the past continue to exist within an environment that is constantly in motion. Looking at these structures brings together multiple layers of understanding. Physical features observed on the seabed provide one perspective, while traditional accounts offer another. Environmental processes connect these perspectives, showing how natural forces can influence both the formation and transformation of coastal settlements. Each layer contributes to a broader picture, where no single element stands alone. The patterns identified beneath the water suggest organization, but they do not present a complete image. Structures appear as fragments, outlines, and arrangements that hint at a larger form. These fragments require interpretation, as they reflect both their original construction and the changes that have occurred since that time. Understanding them involves recognizing this combination of stability and alteration. The presence of artifacts adds further detail to this picture. Small objects, shaped and used in earlier periods, remain as traces of activity. Their condition reflects the environment in which they have been preserved, while their characteristics provide insight into how they may have been used. These objects contribute to the understanding of the site, even as they remain part of a larger and incomplete record. The role of interpretation is central to this process. Observations must be considered carefully, with attention to both the possibilities and the limitations of the evidence. The distinction between natural formations and constructed features, the comparison between narrative and physical findings, and the influence of environmental conditions all require balanced evaluation. The absence of a single definitive conclusion is part of what defines the study of Dwarka. Rather than presenting a fixed answer, the site offers a space where multiple perspectives can be examined. This openness reflects the nature of the evidence, which is both detailed and incomplete. It also supports an approach that values careful observation over immediate certainty. The connection between Dwarka and broader patterns of coastal change reinforces this perspective. The processes that shape the site are not unique, but part of a wider system that continues to operate today. The movement of water, the shifting of sediment, and the gradual alteration of coastlines all contribute to the transformation of environments over time. Through this connection, Dwarka becomes more than a single location. It represents an example of how human activity and natural processes interact, creating outcomes that can be observed long after the original conditions have changed. This interaction is reflected in the structures beneath the water, which show both the presence of organization and the effects of environmental transformation. Looking at the site also highlights the importance of preservation. Maintaining the condition of underwater features allows for continued observation and analysis, ensuring that information is not lost through unnecessary disturbance. This method supports the ongoing nature of research, where each stage builds on previous findings. At the same time, the development of new methods and technologies continues to expand the possibilities for investigation. Improved mapping, imaging, and analysis provide more detailed information, allowing for a deeper understanding of the site. These advancements contribute to a gradual refinement of interpretation, where each new observation adds to the overall picture. The relationship between past and present remains central to this understanding. The patterns observed at Dwarka reflect processes that continue to shape coastal regions, linking historical conditions with modern observations. This connection provides context, allowing the site to be viewed as part of a continuous sequence of change. The quiet nature of the underwater environment reinforces this sense of continuity. Beneath the surface, the structures remain undisturbed by the activity above, holding their position within the seabed. This stillness contrasts with the movement of the water that surrounds them, highlighting the balance between stability and change. The legacy of Dwarka lies in this balance. It is not defined solely by what is known, but by the process of understanding how different elements come together. The combination of narrative, physical evidence, and environmental context creates a layered perspective that continues to evolve. As attention remains focused on the site, the importance of careful study becomes clear. Each observation contributes to a broader understanding, while each interpretation must be considered within the context of available evidence. This method ensures that the study of Dwarka remains grounded and consistent. The presence of the structures beneath the sea serves as a reminder of how environments can change over time. What was once part of the landscape may become part of the seabed, shaped by processes that operate gradually and continuously. This transformation reflects the ongoing interaction between land and water. Through this perspective, Dwarka remains both a place and a subject of study. Its structures continue to be observed, its artifacts continue to be examined, and its interpretation continues to develop. The process of understanding is ongoing, shaped by both observation and analysis. Through this, the story of Dwarka is not defined by a single conclusion, but by the continued effort to explore how its elements connect. The city remains present within this process, existing through the patterns that can be seen and the interpretations that continue to be formed. Thank you for listening to the Sleepy Mind channel. I hope you enjoyed learning about Dwarka.